I think the biggest thing is probably just simplify as best you can. And again, be strong with your user base. Yes, there's a lot that you can do within Teams, but does that then become an operational nightmare when you come to manage some of those bespoke solutions that you're trying to deliver? We've had offices wanting common area phones everywhere. They want IVRs for receptions, which are all very doable. It's just really taking stock of what is needed. What's that business requirement?
Hi, and welcome back to the Teams Insider podcast. This week, I have a great conversation with Tom Garland at WTW, all about their voice journey, initially to Skype for Business and then to Microsoft Teams, a big global deployment, lots of interesting countries, including doing Operator Connect in India. And Tom's the first person I've talked to who's done Operator Connect in India. So really great conversation. Thanks to Tom for all the insights. And also thanks to Pure IP, who are the sponsor of the podcast. Really appreciate their support. On with the show. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. You know, we like to get customer perspective on the podcast. I think that's where we get some real insights. And I've been fortunate to know Tom for a few years, and he's got a great voice story to tell us all at WTW. So, Tom, could you just introduce yourself and give us a little bit of context about your role?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So, Tom Garland, the operations manager at WTW. I've been with Willis and WTW for over 9 years now. And the last 7 years has been my voice journey. So starting off implementing Skype Enterprise Voice in support of agile working across our offices globally. And then more latterly, it's been migrating off of Skype and moving to Teams and further rollouts where we're replacing legacy PBX and moving to Teams Enterprise Voice. So both on a direct routing and Operator Connect model. So lots of change and challenges with each of those components going through.
And it's a big old environment. I think you're somewhere around 30,000 users and like over 100 countries. Like it's a decently complex environment.
Absolutely. So we've got just under 30,000 enterprise voice colleagues. So that's just over 55% of the organization that's using Teams Voice now. And we're in, over 120 countries globally. So quite a big estate, lots to go through. And we're kind of at that bottom of the barrel now where, you know, we've done some of the easier locations into some of those harder countries to implement into. So
awesome. So take us back, because you've been there a while. What was the journey from kind of traditional PBX to initially to Skype for Business?
So we implemented Skype for Business as our global conferencing platform. So we're using Skype conferencing to start with, and then as that evolved and progressed, and like I said, in support of the agile working, we moved to Skype Enterprise Voice, and that's where our journey went through. And that was pre-merger, so that was in the Willis days, and then obviously we merged with Towers Watson to become Willis Towers Watson. So then it was bringing those two environments together and looking at where we had two offices for each of the legacy companies, bringing those into a single space, bringing that agile working and moving to Skype Voice at the time. So, and we've still got a number of PBXs out there. We've been running a simplification program for the last 2 years, looking at all of our offices with PBX and moving them to Teams Voice. So,
and you had I guess still have, we can talk about that, but like had a pretty decent SBC estate, like that was all in-house dedicated SBCs in different regions?
We did. So we had centralized pools of SBCs, paired pools. So we had 2 pools in the US, New York and Nashville, supporting all of our US and Canada offices. We had EMEA in Ipswich and London, supporting all of our EMEA and UK offices. And then we had APAC in Singapore and Australia, and also a couple of SBCs in India. So they were all used primarily for conferencing to start with, certainly in India. And then we had those paired pools for our enterprise voice estate, which some of those are still operational. We've managed to get rid of some of those centralized pools in favor of moving to cloud routing via Operator Connect. So that's simplified things a lot further. Obviously, with that comes the challenges of what's been connected to those SBCs. So we've had legacy AV devices that have been direct connects and needed to be remediated to be able to get off those SBCs. And we've still got a lot of connections within our EMEA hub where we've still got Cisco Call Manager in play. We've got lift phones and security phones and things that still need solutions to be able to fully move off those. But we've been working through those and getting close to remediating most of those to be able to go through. The mid this year is the plan to close down the EMEA pools and get all of those central clusters done.
And that's part of your journey to Teams, is kind of taking, obviously you would have been running the Skype business servers and the SBCs. You're starting to go to more cloud first, so Teams, SBC in the cloud, Operator Connect, is that right?
Absolutely. So we've and still do have around 37 SBCs in the estate, and that's hoping to get down to around 19 through this year, which is just the local breakout. So where we're having to use a local SIP provider, and either for local regulations or legal reasons, having to have those breakouts. So UAE, China, some parts of LATAM where we can't do Operator Connect. Either there's not a provider or partner to do it yet, or there's just those local regulations that don't permit being able to go cloud routing. So.
And what drove you? I think you're pure IP for direct routing and Operator Connect for a lot of the countries. What drove you to kind of go from direct routing to Operator Connect? Was it that transition from dedicated SBC to cloud service? What's that look like? Yeah, so it's also aligned to our network strategy. So we've gone for removing the MPLS connections and going for just direct internet access across a lot of our offices now. So it's simplifying what we have in offices and closing a lot of our data centers as well where these SBCs were housed. So it's really simplifying it, moving everything to the cloud. Certainly from administration perspective, it's a lot simpler. We have had some more complex solutions within that were set up from Skype days, and certainly some offices where we're trying to meet the needs of the business and the requirements that they have on their legacy PBX and moving to Teams. Sometimes Operator Connect doesn't allow some of those translations you can do on the SBCs, but we've managed to simplify and overcome a lot of those, which has been great. And thankfully with the wonderful things you can do with auto attendance and call queues, some of those complex call routings you can actually deliver within Teams. So it's been quite successful in that regard. How's it been from a user transition experience? I guess for users going from PBX to Teams and for users going from Skype for Business to Teams. I'm assuming Skype for Business to Teams is soft phone was easier for the users. Is that fair? Yeah, certainly. I've always sort of gone with the premise of, if you can use a calculator, you can use Teams, right? So it's quite a simple approach. We used to, back when we were implementing Skype, we used to have full-on training programs, on-site, in offices, managing that transition. And then I think the further we came along, it was more allowing other offices and colleagues to catch up with their peers. They've all got this enterprise voice calling capability. It's a lot simpler, it's straightforward. They've got their phone with them wherever their laptop is. So that journey became a lot simpler, having just built-in training modules that we just go and give the guidance to the colleagues. We're not doing those stand-up training sessions anymore. It's a lot more the norm. It's a lot more straightforward. And I think, it feels like the whole market, whole world has kind of moved on to where like software first is pretty natural now, and like it's a dialer, and obviously all the meetings going online kind of help that story, because obviously I use the same experience in my meetings and my calling. And that's true with certainly for WCW, our acceleration to Teams was helped no end through COVID. We rolled out Teams quicker than we would have done that, under a normal working environment. So that really helped things. People work from home, being able to, get them connected and operating as normal. And the same with the return to office and meeting spaces. Colleagues are now used to using their own kit in their own environments, and how they know how to operate it, know how to join meetings. And the same when they then return to the office, is there that remembering how to use the equipment that's in that meeting space? And we've moved to a more bring your own device model. So it's a lot more plug and play. And again, that streamlined the end user experience. So I'd love to dive into that Rooms and BYOD conversation. I'm just back off of ISE, and there was lots of conversation about BYOD. And I feel like your environment is a professionals, highly demanding environment. Have you found BYOD and people plugging in, has that all worked for the business? It has. It's
again, part of closing down the Skype infrastructure, we had to remediate a lot of our AV devices to make them, make sure we were using Teams compatible. So through that process, we put in a lot of the Poly Studio bars, and they were just based on a plug and play basis. So putting a Docker in the meeting space, allowing colleagues to take their laptops, plug in, and use that meeting room, effectively. And that's certainly, revamped our AV standards. We still have a number of different room types, but having that BYOD model has made it a lot easier for that end user just to come in, know what they're working with. Again, that's that transition from being in your home office to being in the work office. You can then you're using your laptop, you're plugging in with USB-C, and away you go. So it's certainly made it a lot more straightforward. It's less guidance. Colleagues are not having to click on QR codes and refresh themselves before the meeting starts. So we certainly reduced a lot of those queries when my meeting's not started, or I don't know how to use the kit, or
I didn't invite the room somehow, or that.
Exactly. And you have these guidance and QR codes and things, but no one does that prep before the meeting to make sure they read it, go through it. So the BYOD model's really worked out well. It's improved that end user experience and allowed us to refresh meeting spaces to our current environment as well.
Yeah, it feels like Microsoft are investing in that space a lot at the moment as well. I think having the AV devices auto detect and pop up, and having the second screen effectively be the stage, it feels like Microsoft are kind of acknowledging that is a strategy for some people. Yeah,
it certainly it works, and again, from a room standards and from a cost perspective, not having those touch panels in the center of the table, it just reduces the cost and complexity for those end users entering that space and knowing what they're doing. So I'd say it's been a success story for us and worthwhile.
Interesting. And what about physical devices for users? Are you mostly soft phone, or the physical IP phones? What does that look like?
So again, for us, it's all just Teams client for enterprise voice. Soft phones. We have common area devices where needed. In terms of where we need handsets in reception spaces or doctors' offices or anything like that. But our soft phones are all just Teams, laptop, mobile app. And again, we're moving away from any of the soft phone devices that were through Cisco and CUCMs in favor of moving to Teams.
Cool. What are you doing when it comes to compliance and recording and all that stuff?
So for true call compliance call recording, we're using Mnemonics IX Cloud, and that's been working really well for us. So we've got that in operation in the UK, Germany, Australia, and Asia Pac, and Israel, I think, is the location that we're using it. So that's keeping us compliant with MiFID and other regulatory requirements, as well as having the calls recording for training and complaint purposes for some other lines of business. So Mnemonics is great the way you can set up various different recording profiles. You can really hone in on what is being recorded and what isn't. Whereas the Skype days was Redbox, it was just record everything, huge data dumps of recorded calls.
So you've got some very specific scenarios, like record this call scenario, but not this call scenario, or I know Mnemonics has some clever stuff around like meeting titles and all sorts of things.
It does. So you can have particular meeting titles or keywords. So it's do not record or record certain meetings. I've got it recording calls, either inbound or just outbound of particular call queues. So where we're using call queues for dial out as well as inbound, those calls are captured. So it's really honing in to make sure that all of the generic peer-to-peer calls are not being captured, internal meetings are not being captured, and just the true client calls are there. So we've got various different flavors of recording profiles, which is fun and a bit of a headache, but it's great that it's so flexible that we can tweak those around and meet each business need. And as well as that, we've got record on demand in a couple of locations as well. So no profiles, but just having an app that just records on demand as needed.
Nice. And is there a global standard around convenience recording and transcription? Like, do you allow that by default, not allow it, or does it break down by country and region?
It depends on any local in-country restrictions, but we don't have, so just for standard Microsoft Teams meetings, we don't use transcription. That's turned off in most instances, but the ability to record is available for most. Germany doesn't have it, by example. So there's some locations that have that turned off, and we have various profiles within Teams to select who is able to record and who isn't.
Yeah, it's interesting with the AI stuff coming, how the transcription, like, it feels like in your vertical, like transcription off seems to be the default, but now with the AI tools, the ability, the want to capture that is interesting.
Exactly, and certainly with the translations as well.
Yeah, makes sense. Awesome. Another thing I wanted to dive into was India, because you're one of the few people I've spoken to that's actually done the new OC in India thing. So can you take us through, first of all, what that is and how that's worked out for you?
I could start with painful, but we have got there. So yeah, it's been challenging.
Well, it's interesting because I talked to all the telcos when it launched, and normally the telcos are pretty happy to talk to me about this is how it works, this is what it is, and it was all very quiet for a long while. Yeah,
they all promise you start off approaching a vendor and they can, we can do that, and then you dig into it and they can't. So the vendor we've gone with, first they said yes, we can offer OC, but they wanted dedicated MPLS trunks, which goes against our new network model. There's an increased cost. It was, it's not the OC that we're used to, of just that very simple, straightforward cloud routing, no infrastructure. So it took a number of months to wait for iterations and working with Microsoft and the operator to fully get licensed. I think that was the first one, was, we can do OC, but we're not quite there yet. And then, once we actually did get connected and set up some users, we had some challenges around, offering the true mobile capability or fixed. So we do have... Yeah,
because there's two scenarios, isn't there? So one is you have OC in India, but it's basically IP phone to the desk, so it's not really OC like or Teams phone like we think about it. And then there is an option for some mobility.
Exactly, and we've got both. So we've got one location in India that is fixed. So it's that Teams calling is only available to those colleagues when they're in the office. So outside of the office, it doesn't work. So again, it's got the location for us there. And then we've got some other offices in Mumbai that do have the full mobile Operator Connect, and it's working well. There's some challenges around setting up some of those common area devices. So they then need to be reversed to be fixed rather than mobile, but it's got there. And I guess I wasn't convinced we were going to get there, and we're now entering that journey in the Philippines and Thailand and Vietnam actually at the moment. I'm interested as to whether we do get that full capability as we used to in other regions.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're on that journey to being cloud first where you can, but you've definitely got some of the countries that just get really tricky in terms of compliant cloud native service versus local SBC.
Exactly, and some of those, some of the headaches we've been through. It's probably sometimes worth going direct routing and using the SBCs. Certainly, India, we had SBC estate already. We could have had a SIP trunk connection from the likes of Tata or other vendors and set that up and had a little bit greater control over it. But I'm thankful to say we have got there. Where we get to with the Philippines in the coming weeks and months will be another interest.
No, we have to revisit the pod at some point and go through all your tricky countries.
See where we get to and see if we get that 37 SBCs down to 19.
Awesome. And Tom, I guess lastly, it'd be great. You've been on this journey, like lots of complex countries. You've done a lot. What would your advice be to other customers around moving to Teams Phone and more cloud native calling?
I think the biggest thing is probably just simplify as best you can. So, and again, be strong with your user base. Yes, there's a lot that you can do within Teams, but does that then become an operational nightmare when you come to manage some of those, bespoke solutions that you're trying to deliver? So, we've had a lot of those. We've had offices wanting, common area phones everywhere. They want IVRs for receptions, which are all very doable. But it's just really taking stock of what is needed. What's that business requirement? How do we simplify it as much as possible and make sure that Operator Connect can meet those needs? Because the wonderful things you can do on a direct routing basis and having those SBCs to do call transformations, you can't do within Teams. Operator Connect.
Yeah, so you're locking yourself into needing custom SBC config and supporting the SBC and operationalizing that support, I guess.
Exactly. So, it's just making sure that you really simplify, don't promise the world, try and do things as cleanly and simply as you can, I think would be my best advice. And be strong with users and their requirements. We are bringing a benefit to the office and the end users in terms of that mobility and agility of, Teams voice. So just keep it as straightforward as you can.
Nice, good advice. I love it. Anybody that's preaching for standards or simplification, I'm all for.
Absolutely. Good luck trying to achieve it. There's always those deviations.
Yeah. Oh, Tom, thanks for sharing the journey. It's really interesting, and it sounds like a great success in terms of the project. And yeah, maybe we revisit at some point and see how many of those SBCs you've got down next year and what the architecture looks like.
Absolutely. No, thanks, Tom.
All right, cheers.
Okay, take care.